Good morning, ninth graders. I hope that you're doing well and that you're getting ready for spring break. In order for us to do that, I'm just going to introduce the final task of Criterion D. So you should have finished on Wednesday your analyzation of your three existing products and submitted that. But now that it's Friday, we're going to start working on our design brief, and that's task 4, the last task of Criterion A, and that is where you're going to analyze and draw conclusions about all the things you've discovered and looked at during Criterion A to help you with your developing your design plan in Criterion B. So, in order to complete the design brief, we have to use the research and the sources that we identified in task 2 in our research plan to help us. So if you need to remember that, we'll go back to what we started on the 25th of March, where we have our research plan. And you can find my example, and you should find your work there as well. So if we're looking at our research plan, whenever I'm talking about questions in the design brief, I'll be talking about these questions here from the column, from the far left column of your research plan. So every time I talk about questions or research questions, this is the column I'm talking about. Whenever I talk about the source you're using, it will be the source you identified here. So that'll be what you're analyzing in your design brief. So let's take a look at how we're going to complete that design brief. So we're going to be using this document here. This is the format that you will use to complete the design brief. Let's take a look at that. I've come up with a basic formula for your design brief that should make it easier to do and complete. So the first thing you're going to do is you'll put the questions from your research plan, you'll put them in bold. So you'll take whatever that first question was in your research plan and you'll put it in bold. Then after that, you'll describe why that source is reliable and useful. So if it's your primary source where you talk to your teacher, it's reliable because you talk directly with your audience, right? If it's a resource from a university about education and teaching, we know it's reliable because it comes from a reputable institution, it comes from a university, these types of things. So we'll describe why the source is reliable, why the information is useful. After that, you'll give a summary of what you learned. You're not going to summarize the entire article or the entire source that you've looked at. You're just going to summarize the things that are most helpful to you in this instance. So what theories can you draw from the source? What techniques can you draw from the source that could help you as you try to design something to help the teacher that you chose for this unit? After that, you're going to describe, maybe in a sentence or two, maybe how that information that you learned from that source here, how that information could be applied to your own future design. So if you learned that the color red is helpful for teachers, right? You can say, I will utilize the color red in my design, maybe for the this aspect of it, or maybe in some way, right? So this way you've just touched on, I recognize why this source is useful, why it's reliable. I see useful things and I've taken useful things from this source, and I can imagine and critically think how to utilize that in my own way. Okay, so those are sort of the 3 steps of analyzing the sources in the design brief. After that, you'll put in an MLA citation for the source that you use to answer that question. So you'll take the citation that you created here, and you'll just insert that there. And then you'll continue that format with each question. So we have our first question from the research plan, and then we'll do this whole thing again with the second question, the third question, however many you had, whether it was 3 or 4, you'll continue that with each one from the research plan. Then after that, you'll write a conclusion. And after you've finished all of your questions and analyzing all of your sources, you'll write a conclusion. And there you'll kind of bring all those ideas together and sort of see how you can apply all of that information, or imagine maybe how that information could be applied in a design. You should also mention how the existing products that you looked at in task 3 inspired you. This is a part to bring in all those conclusions you drew in task 3 and to marry them with all of these ideas that you've analyzed from your sources. You need to be sure to explain how These ideas that you've come up with could meet the teacher's needs. So you're not exactly giving concrete plans for a design here, right? This isn't your design specification. You're not saying exactly what your design needs to be successful, but you're sort of hitting some little highlights or high points that these are things I should use. These are things that should be utilized. These are ideas that I've learned that will be helpful to me. And all of this information here in your conclusion is sort of a wrap up for you to explain how this is going to be helpful for you to create a helpful tool for your teacher for this unit. And then after that, you'll just put in your MLA Works Cited page. So I've given an example of how that should look in your design journal. So you'll go in the task 4 slot, right, for criterion A. You'll have your research question, your first one, and then your paragraph with an analysis of the reliability of the source, summary of what you've learned, and descriptive analysis of how to use that information, and then the citation for that source. And then you'll continue with your research question 2, same paragraph, same basic structure, and then your citation 3, same thing. 4, if you have a 4th sort question, same thing. And then finally your conclusion that goes over all those things. And remember, when you make your works cited page, all of your citations should be in alphabetical order. And so that's why I've written them this way instead of with numbers. If you have any questions about the structure, please email me or write a comment on the post. You should get started on this today because we will be working on this today, the Wednesday after spring break, because remember the Monday is still a day off because it's Easter, and that Friday after spring break, which is the 24th. All of criterion A will be due on ManageBac on the 24th. So that means we'll have 3 days to finish up the design brief because each of you have chosen just between 3 and 4 questions for your research plan. And yeah, because you've chosen just between 3 or 4 questions and you already should have done the research on it, this should be relatively easy and come quickly. So 3 days is more than enough. 3 class days is more than enough to work on and finish this. So we'll work on this today and then the Wednesday and Friday after break. On Wednesday after break, you'll have to show some evidence that you've completed it, but just start working on it today. Take it at your own pace, and you should not have to work on this over spring break because we have 3 days of class to do it. If you have any questions, email me again or comment on the post. I will talk to you guys after break. Enjoy your break, rest up. Please take the time to yourself to rejuvenate and relax. Have a great break and a great weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.